Hello and welcome back, and today I want to discuss a subject I've been meaning to make a video about for a while, and frankly it's going to be one that's going to annoy a lot of users. Today I want to talk about why quite a few people actually prefer turnkey NAS solutions from brands like the ones I've got here on the table rather than opting for TrueNAS, UnRAID or Proxmox.
Move this man!
And I know by the end of that sentence there are a lot of you watching this that are now already angry at me. Before we go any further, let's establish a few things. Number one, DIY in the world of home labbing, private data server ownership and having your own NAS server, call it what you will, is fantastic. It is incredibly rewarding. It is way more affordable. You have a greater degree of control and flexibility and scalability with DIY solutions. Again, TrueNAS and UnRAID are two fantastic examples. But this video is not about saying why they are the bee's knees, the dog's danglies. This is about why, for some users, it's just not their cup of tea. I'm going to give you 10 reasons why that is the case. And before you take to the comments with every single point and tell me why I am flat out wrong, I'm also recording a video with 10 reasons why DIY solutions like TrueNAS and UnRAID are better than these. So trust me, I'm covering both sides of the seesaw here. But without further ado, let's crack on with number one. If you are someone that has largely always used command line management of your servers, your DIY NAS, you've been heavily reliant on the UX and the GUI of the likes of UnRAID and TrueNAS, if you've only ever used those, you will never have appreciated to this point just how sodding easy these are to use. Compare driving manual versus automatic. Compare PC gaming versus console gaming. When you look at Synology DSM, QNAP QTS, TerraMaster TOS, Ugreen UGOS, Acerstores ADM, Unify's Drive software, all of them are so easy to use. And it's just for a lot of users that look at DIY NAS software and you think, oh my God, it's just so intimidating. There's a reason for that. They have come from an incredibly easy hand-holdy platform. And furthermore, not only are turnkey NAS solutions like these way easier to manage day to day, hour by hour, if you drop in every day, week or month, in the click of a finger, but on top of that, the range of client tools, first-party client tools, I might add, that these guys roll out on their, paid platform, so I would sodding expect the bells and whistles, the number of mobile applications, desktop client applications for every operating system out there currently, and the range to which they are tailored for use is unparalleled when compared against DIY, which have got barely any first-party client tools and are heavily reliant on third-party tools to get the job done. You know that same reason that people use PLEX and Jellyfin for streaming their multimedia? Because they are simplified tools? Yes, it's great that they exist, but there is a reason that even DIY NAS platform users utilize those media platforms. They understand that the NAS operating system that they are utilizing, be it just a UI or a full OS, is not including that in the DIY sphere, and they're having to use Jellyfin, having to use PLEX Media Server, but it is still a third-party software, which again, there's levels of integration, but there's still no avoiding you are using another third-party element into your ecosystem. Now, you can use those with these, of course, but all of these platforms, with the exception of Unify, I will say, arrived with their own multimedia applications for tailored access. They have the likes of video access. They have office management tools integrated as well, surveillance applications, backup applications. All of these apps and bells and whistles allow a tool to be utilized for your specific need. Whereas in DIY NAS solutions, it's pretty much a case of we are giving you the storage tools, and then after that, you kind of have to use third-party elements, which again can come across as quite intimidating to turnkey NAS users. And moving away from ease of use, turnkey NAS solutions are crazy easy to set up. Some, you look at things like the Synology B Station, which is a legitimate 5-minute setup, and the same goes for Unify as well on that score. But all of these systems arrive without the need of KVM, without the need of setting up a monitor, a keyboard and a mouse. And I know there are exceptions to that. If you look at something like UnRAID, you can create a USB and boot from that. But when it comes to maintenance, when it comes to troubleshooting, a lot of these end up falling back on KVM, which has been made easier with those lovely little KVM devices we've talked about recently, but still, NAS devices like these have multiple ways in which you can set them up without a KVM and troubleshoot without KVMing in, with the system having a lot of reversible defaults with ease. Again, there is a question of security there. More on that in another video coming very soon. But still, nonetheless, we can't argue with the fact that setting up turnkey NAS solutions alongside day-to-day use is just easier. Remember earlier when I mentioned tools? Well, pretty much every single NAS turnkey solution in the market like these has integrated browser-based file exploring. Now, TrueNAS have made it easier in TrueNAS Scale, and indeed UnRAID has a somewhat rudimentary file explorer now built into its GUI, but they pale in comparison to stuff like this, whereby you've got a full, real file explorer, not just I can see my files and folders, but integrating file sharing with right-click options, with sharing and security management built into those shares, viewing thumbnails, audio files, video files, going through photo files there, PDFs, extraction, zipping, the works, viewing ISOs, unpacking ISOs for that level, and they're all built into file explorers that are, you don't have to install with a third party, you don't have to choose to install them, they're just there. The extent to which they can be used does differ from brand to brand, but pretty much all of the features I just mentioned are available on pretty much all of them. In the turnkey NAS world, again, it's still inbuilt file explorers are still very rudimentary. In the DIY NAS operating system field. The only exception really at the moment comes down to something like Zimmer OS, which has scaled things up, but it's still a relatively new player, and their level of the market share right now is very small compared to the behemoths of TrueNAS and UnRAID. This next point is a little bit more niche. The majority, not all, but the majority of turnkey NAS solutions in the market, they arrive with surveillance software built in, which helps to maximize the investment when you purchase these combined hardware-software solutions. Now, there are bits and bobs of software you can get to run surveillance on your DIY NAS setup, but they don't really compare for the most part against things like Synology Surveillance Station Platform, QNAP's QVR Surveillance. Hell, even other players have entered the fold with Surveillance Center on Asus Store, and even TerraMaster have got into the market with their own surveillance software built in with the system. Heck, right now, although Unify doesn't integrate surveillance into their NAS platforms, I wouldn't put it past them to start integrating to a greater or lesser extent Unify Protect into their NAS ecosystem somewhere down the road. And in DIY NAS circles, you just don't have that level of out-the-box integration. Now, to be fair, camera licenses come into the fold. Where on Synology or QNAP's platform, for example, adding more cameras requires camera licenses after a certain point. But the best surveillance software that I've seen available for DIY NAS platforms that is comparable in quality in some cases to something like Surveillance Station also factors in licenses to a point. So it's not really a them or us situation there. And ultimately, for those that look at a NAS server for a surveillance deployment alongside other things, it's very attractive. This next point is slightly less specific about TrueNAS or UnRAID, although it does apply to a point. When it comes to turnkey NAS solutions, there is a much clearer through line for support. When it comes to most DIY NAS platforms, you are heavily reliant on community support. Even on something like UnRAID, where you have to pay like 250 NICA for a lifetime license, which again, you've got to support devs, but it doesn't guarantee you more community support or premium support by going for that option than someone that goes for the monthly option or someone that just has it on the trial for infinity. And the same goes for TrueNAS as well, where they have paid support options out there, but the majority of other users have to rely on community support, which in of itself is still fantastic. It's people in the know helping one another. But it's a less clear through line than going for turnkey NAS when there are a lot of users who enjoy that turnkey NAS solutions provide a single point of support in terms of hardware and software. Actual warranty support they can point at where it's all encompassing. Again, warranty has a lifespan, but so does the software have a given lifespan. Again, more on that on another video very, very soon. Remember, I'm not rubbishing DIY NAS here. I'm merely trying to articulate why people that reside in this ecosystem aren't in a big rush to leave it. And moreover from that, even if the brand themselves that they bought the system from can't support them, in some cases, like in the case of the TerraMaster and in the Ugreen, and particularly in the TerraMaster actually, you can actually allow them to remotely troubleshoot your device, which I know some users are not going to like opening that door or the fact that door could exist. But there are users that like to know they've got that safety net right there at the back. And finally, if none of that works, if none of the paid platform is any help to their problem, they've still got community, they've still got official community pages, they've still got Reddit and more, not completely different to that the likes of DIY NAS already have. This next point, I'll admit, when it comes to people thinking about why they might not leave turnkey, isn't going to be for everyone. In the follow-up video, I am going to discuss more why DIY NAS software is often the go-to and why a lot of those users will never go towards turnkey. But one of the things I want to allude to for this point is about rigidity, because DIY NAS platforms do not like the rigidity of these. However, that rigidity, whether it is in terms of software, whether it is in terms of the hardware you get, does result in clearly defined software development. When you look at the features, when you look at how software matures and the features and the bells and the whistles that get added to any piece of software, it is a lot easier to do that and therefore a lot more efficient in terms of QA when the hardware profiles that you are building on are rigid and controlled. Again, those are horrible words, and it is weird to use rigid and strict and locked in terms to describe something as a plus. But I think in terms of focused software development, we have to acknowledge that generally feature upgrades and the way they are rolled out and a clear funding model can often be very beneficial on any platform. And the fact that DIY NAS platforms like TrueNAS, because realistically, how many TrueNAS users are actually putting money in the kitty towards the development of TrueNAS? And UnRAID, where people are paying $250 lifetime licenses, but they never pay again, I think we have to acknowledge that in terms of focused software development, there is a grey area here in the middle where turnkey NAS software has a very clear path for software development. This next point I know is one that actually swayed existing DIY NAS users onto turnkey, as well as formed a basis of why some users purchased turnkey NAS solutions in the first place. And that is, in the last few years, a number of prominent turnkey NAS solutions in the market allow you to just lump on TrueNAS or UnRAID anyway. In the past, a lot of these brands, if you tried to install another operating system, it de facto, in their eyes, completely invalidated your warranty. But times have changed, and now the likes of Ugreen, the likes of Acer Store, the likes of TerraMaster, and to be fair, it was Acer Store that were loudest and proudest about this first. You can use their NAS software that these include and all of the bells and whistles that are rolled in with it, or you can just junk it and use DIY NAS software anyway. However, if you go DIY first, with the exception of using something like Exponology, you don't really have the option to switch paths in the same way you can switch back. Again, it's not wholly inexclusive. QNAP still refuse to engage with it, and Synology, it's barely even possible. But still, a number of DIY NAS software can still be used on Turnkey NAS solutions, and for some users that have entered this ecosystem, that was enough for them just to know that that door is available if and when they want it. You remember earlier on when I said things are just easier with navigation and managing the UX and the GUI on Turnkey NAS compared to a lot of DIY NAS solutions? Well, frankly, are we reading a Terry Pratchett novel from the 90s? Because there's wizards everywhere. When you look at Turnkey NAS solutions, there's storage wizards, there's sharing wizards, user creation wizards, everything from iSCSI wizards to snapshot wizards, security wizards. There are wizards guiding you through the steps everywhere. And although there is light, early, first-time initialization wizards built into something like TrueNAS, and very few wizards in terms of UnRAID overall in terms of guidance, although there are tips and tricks, it's still a lot of text in your way, there is no avoiding that on the field of DIY NAS, there is clearly still a demand for easy setup wizards and clear defaults. There is a reason why OpenZFS/TrueNAS/IX systems engaged with the development of HexOS. There was clearly a demand there for such a thing. Turnkey NAS is still riddled in hand-holding, which for some users that are either considering or are already engaged in this ecosystem is only a plus. And needless to say, this last one's going to be contentious, but there are just some software features, either in their unique design or simply in their ease of deployment, that are only available currently on Turnkey. Examples: if we look at Synology and TerraMaster, they've got SHR, Synology Hybrid RAID, or T-RAID. Ultimately, these allow you to mix and match drives and do it with ease without the performance penalties that you might find in the mixed hard drive array of that mathematical equation that is UnRAID's mixed drive deployment. In the case of TrueNAS, again, I mentioned it earlier, with any RAID, something that's in very early development, but something that's been on Synology's platform for, I think, a decade at this point, and maybe 5 years from TerraMaster. And again, it's not impossible. You can create mini clustered RAIDs and sort of put them all together in one giant storage area, but it's not as fluid and as easy to set up as T-RAID or SHR. And SHR, despite, let's face it, a lot of things Synology have done wrong in the last year or two, is still something that draws users in, the fact that they can mix and match drives as they scale up. And again, we'll come back to scalability on the next video. Another thing, you look at QNAP. QNAP's got their Q tier, their cold, warm, hot tiering system. I'm not suggesting you can't do that with multiple VDEVs on TrueNAS and taking advantage of multiple scripts and selective block management across different areas of storage that you create on those VDEVs, and automated rsync to move data between them semi-autonomously. But on the QNAP side, Q-tier simply looks at the most frequently accessed data and then moves it to the appropriate tier. Doesn't copy it like caching, it moves it. And it's little things like that with the ease of setup, just out the gate, that with Turnkey is just not available in that way in DIY circles. Remember, the focus of this video has never been about saying Turnkey is better than DIY or DIY is better than Turnkey. I'm trying to explain why users that are either considering or in this ecosystem are either intimidated, scared, or put off by Turnkey, by DIY. And I really look forward to talking to you about it in the comments, and I hope you watch this to the end. If you did watch this to the end, if you comment, I want you to tell me your favourite fruit and then comment, and then we'll both know we're on the same page. But apart from that, I really look forward to seeing you on the next video, where frankly, these guys are going to get an absolute kicking, and I hope you're there for that. But thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have enjoyed this, and if it's going to be contentious, I'll see you down there. Again, if you are interested in buying any of the products that I've talked about today, there will be links in the description to different stores. So if you found the video helpful, and if you want to support what we do, and if you were going to shop at those stores anyway, make sure those 3 things are true, then please use those links. It allows you to passively support what me and Ed are doing here at NAS Compares, and also you do it with 0 additional cost to yourself. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.